all these emeritus, these we are recording, all these founding members. I'm honored to be in the presence of such greatness. So thank you all for being here and coming back.
Oh, the silver-tongued devil.
There we go. So anyway, so there's been a lot of talk about net zero, and the path to net zero, I think most of us realize, is not easy. And so the big thing is it's a combination of energy efficiency, conservation, renewables. So, you know, I like to think of the three-legged stool. You know, we talk about sustainability and the financial, the economic, and the social piece. With the net zero, it is a balancing of those three things. Energy efficiency, the conservation is the energy efficiency is you know, having things that are very energy efficient, but conservation is just turning things off and not using things when you don't need to. And then once we really get the energy efficiency and conservation pulled together, then, you know, the renewable energy can provide a greater offset and get us to net zero. So talk about energy efficiency first. You know, we've got lighting, and most everybody's done all the lighting already. You know, the indoor lighting, the outdoor, the parking garages, street lighting. LEDs have come down and such dramatically in price, and so it's like anybody who is doing anything but LED, you have to ask yourself why. HVAC is a big opportunity. So much technology improvements with, you know, heat pumps and the variable frequency drives and the mini splits and stuff like that. There's so much going on in the HVAC world, and that's where a big part of our costs are. You know, the space conditioning. But here in the USGBC, our biggest thing is all about the building envelope and the orientation. So what we want to be able to do is leverage natural light and ventilation systems and stuff, and really minimize the heat transfer so we can minimize space conditioning needs. And then we've got plug loads. You know, everybody's got Energy Star equipment now, but you still need to be looking at how much energy does each of these devices use. And then we'll talk a little bit about phantom loads, but water heating then is the last thing. And there's been a lot of, you know, we've talked about solar water heating, and then you can also do, you know, have a heat sink for ground source heating and cooling. And then there's also just tankless technologies and you know, where we're getting that water heating up to, you know, the high 90% efficiency. As opposed to like 80% efficiency from years back. So that's energy efficiency, and then there's energy conservation. Now, if we could just get people to turn lights off, if we could get people to turn equipment off, that'd be great. Unfortunately, people don't do that very well, and so that's why we have controls. And so I don't know how many people are already using aux sensors in offices and in your homes, but they are a great benefit. I mean, how many times have you walked out of your office thinking that, you know, you're going to be right back, and you get caught in either a hallway, or somebody pulled you in their office or whatever, and you never make it back to your office. And so that lights have been on for, you know, for an hour when it would have gone off if you'd have just had an aux sensor. You know, the dimming controls and just all the different lighting controls is just so smart. And then the same thing with HVAC, you know, the automatic setbacks, and there's so much predictive analysis going on with HVAC these days. So those are just important controls to invest in. And then, of course, we talk about the plug loads. There is so much going on. Anything that has a remote control, and these days, almost what doesn't have a remote control, they're always on. And so there's always using energy. And so it's important that we have these power strips where you can turn things off and literally turn them off, as opposed to just down to a sleep mode. And of course, there are a lot of particularly on computers, where they do have the ability to put them in standby and sleep mode and stuff like that. And to have your IT departments automatically put that equipment to go to sleep is important. Then the last piece of this is renewable energy. So once you've really worked on your energy efficiency and conservation strategies, renewables can play a big part of that. You know, there's all kinds of renewable energy, solar, wind, geothermal, tidal, small hydro, biomass. You know, we don't have a whole lot of wind here in this particular area. Geothermal, you know, we don't have, the crust of the earth is not thin enough here to take advantage of geothermal. Obviously, we're nowhere near any ocean tides. Small hydro is a possibility. You know, we thought that hydropower was just going to be the cat's meow back in the 100 years ago, and we realized what kind of environmental devastation that's done to ecosystems. But small hydro can still work. And then biomass still offers a lot of promise because biomass has got, it's zero carbon. I mean, we're pulling carbon out of the air to grow this, and then we're putting it back into the air. So while we don't necessarily want to do this, it is a renewable energy resource, and it could provide for base loads. But solar is the best renewable energy source in our area. And so what I want to do is introduce Eric Schneider to talk about this. Eric is actually works with me at StraightUpSolar. He's our Director of Business Development. Tremendous sustainability advocate. He had a lengthy career at the St. Louis Regional Chamber. I met Eric when he was started doing the Green Business Challenge with Gene Ponzi, and Eric just did a great job there. I also found out that he did the St. Louis Green Jobs Report and the Green Confluence Summit. So Eric was really the green guy for the Regional Chamber. He is now the primary advocate for the Grow Solar campaign, at least at StraightUpSolar, along with Renew Missouri or I'm sorry, it's Renew Missouri. That's the commercial Grow Solar program. But anyway, Eric is going to talk to us tonight about the Grow Solar program and about kind of solar and how that can work for us. So Eric, welcome. Let me stop sharing and I'll let you start sharing.
Great, thanks Steve for that great introduction. It's great to see everybody. I haven't done one of these virtual ones with the chapter.
Hey, Eric, you're really sounding buzzy.
Oh, I don't know if I can do anything about that. Is that still pretty bad?
Yeah, like there's static or something going on.
It's feedback, I think.
Is it?
This was not going to work well then. They only have one computer.
Can you push back from your workspace a little? Adjust where you are speaking?
Not any better? Maybe I'll log off.
Eric, you may want to call in using your phone.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Sometimes that works.
That's a good idea.
It should be in that email I just sent.
Eric, if you click on the little button next to the mute, the little triangle, and you can choose switch phone to phone audio, and it'll give you a dial-in number. That's a little Zoom trick for everyone.
Thank you.
We're losing him.
Is he still with us?
I think so. I think he's calling
He's
in.
turned off his video.
I'm flashing back to when we had challenges with PowerPoints and then when we had challenges with compatibility of Apple versus PCs, and there was always something.
Says Rosanna Dana.
Yeah.
The technology problems never go away.
They just evolved to something.
Exactly.
something
I
different.
remember when we only had 8K of memory available to us.
You're dating yourself, Tim.
I intentionally.
You play like those.
We need a couple 4-year-olds to help us with this technology.
Yeah.
I remember when my phone number was Woodley 2292.
Right.
We still have party lines in the Ozarks. So.
Are those lines to parties?
Yeah, there are lines where people listen in. You know.
That's right. I grew up with that.
Did you?
In Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
It was too.
Well, we had a party line in Bethesda Chevy Chase.
Anybody know a good energy joke, Steve O'Rourke?
Derek.
I should have come prepared. What kind of a host am I that I don't have jokes to tell while we're waiting for the next presentation to begin?
Are
Eric's
you
got his
there?
video back.
Is that working, Eric? Can you hear us?
I don't know, can you hear me? Is this any better?
Much
Yeah.
better.
Much better.
Do you have any feedback?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Mute your computer.
All right, is that better?
Yes.
All right, I'll be brief here. Let's see here. Let me share my screen.
If you're on the phone, mute your computer.
I have a 7 o'clock Zoom meeting.
How many green associates does it take to change a light bulb?
How many, Tim?
As many as you want.
It says 27.
Eric, will you test your audio again?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, very
perfect.
good.
That's really good.
Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
No.
Yeah.
You need to share your screen.
Kelly.
We're all pulling for you, Eric.
I
Well,
kind of lost
I-
interest in my presentation, to be honest with you.
There we
All
go.
right, can you hear me? Can you see anything?
There we go.
All right, I'll be.
Good
Thank
to
you for your
go.
patience. This is very embarrassing. I apologize. All right, just real quick here. I think you guys know how solar works, but just to say again, I'm Eric Schneider with StraightUpSolar. Sorry to be here virtually, but hope someday I'll meet you guys back in person. Know some of the people in this group here. Just want to give kind of a brief overview. That was a great introduction, Steve, on how solar works here. The big question we always get here in the solar industry is there enough sunshine? And this is an irradiance map from the National Renewable Energy Lab that shows us that 92% of the sunshine that Miami gets is here in St. Louis here. So we don't have the salsa dancing and the South Beach action, but we clearly got the sunshine to make solar possible. And the inset map is kind of interesting. That's Germany. You can see how blue Germany is, but they are at least 50% solar right now. So clearly policy differentiations makes a big difference in kind of how solar is adopted across the world and even across the United States here. But clearly the mechanics of how solar works is what I'll go into is clearly possible here in St. Louis. Let's see, next slide. There we go. So I just want to give a little definition terms. I think you guys probably know this. The difference between a kilowatt and kilowatt hour. Kilowatt is power. That's the terms we use in terms of the size of the array, how many modules or panels that come together to give you the optimal power at the optimum moment, kind of like a tachometer. And a kilowatt hour is what you see on your bill. And that's probably the most important thing that we talk about when we do community education, to understand what your bill is and how many kilowatt hours you're expending for consumption. The average household is 11,000 kilowatt hours in the course of a year, with kind of obviously the HVAC equipment taking most of that stuff. So how does arrays work? Remember, you guys probably knew Sheila Voss. She used to always show that photosynthesis is how a solar array works. She used to actually show a real plant, but I got this plastic plant here. The array, sunshine hits the array, ignites the photons, which then ignites the electrons that then generate the direct current power that then goes into an inverter that switches you to the AC power that exists in your house, that goes into your load panel, and then that electricity then is tied to the grid here. So pretty simple program. I think the panel, Steve can probably interject here, but I think most panels are about 23% efficient in terms of what the power they're generating from the solar sunshine that then turns into the electricity into your house here. These are the things that we're kind of looking for. If you're thinking about going solar, the things that we look for on our end, looking at system size and design. We talk over kind of the module types in terms of if you want a high efficiency panel. Right now, our panels are pretty much between 320 and 375 watts, but they're clearly 440 watt panels, and each panels have 60 cells inside them or 72 cells. So there's clearly a lot of differentiation in modules. Different versions of inverters could be micro inverters that immediately transfer the power from direct current to alternate current into your house, or just regular string inverters that are used mostly on commercial projects that are kind of cheaper if you have no shading going on here. But the variety of factors that goes in, what I kind of wanted to mention is how important the environment is into locating where your house is. You could have trees that are blocking your array that could have affected how your production is in the wintertime versus the summertime, depending on the angle of the sun. Obviously, snow and hail matter, but squirrels are also a factor. We have a nice product called Critter Guard that protects the arrays from being wires being chewed up from the squirrels, and that's a big issue that we have here in the St. Louis region. If you ever talk solar, bring up Critter Guard to your project developer here. Batteries have been a big issue, big attractive issue for homeowners in looking to kind of arbitrage, maybe their rates here. And I'll kind of show you the battery is on the left side of here. The gray box here is the solar battery backup system, and then it's tied to two inverters and then kind of a load panel and into your main load here. But I want to show you this chart here, which is pretty cool, of how batteries work here. As you are out in the old days, maybe you're back in the office and you're not needing as much energy into your house. That's kind of the yellow area here in the middle here, but your battery can charge up while you're not working. That difference then can be used at nighttime. So it's really cool for time of use. As Ameren kind of starts moving us to time of use charges, the ability for you to charge your battery during the day and then discharge that at night can really help you save money going forward. And then net metering also allows a pretty good advantage for battery because you're trading that credits back and forth during the daytime and then cashing them out at the end. Ameren has a policy where every month they reset the net metering value here. And I know I'm going kind of fast here. Steve and I can answer kind of any questions at the end here. Just want to go briefly over the incentives here. There's a federal renewable energy credit that's at 26% of the cost of a solar PV system, and that's all inclusive of labor costs, system installation, interconnection. That is going to be 26% this year and 26% next year. And there's no maximum on that credit, but it is a dollar for dollar takeoff of your tax liability. And that's really important for nonprofits and other organizations because they're going to need to find somebody with a tax appetite to install that solar array onto their system. That was done. I know Steve worked on that when he was at Microgrid at the Missouri Botanical Garden Earthway Center, where they have a grid on top. The Commerce Bank Center, where the USGBC is located. I think the credits were bought by a corporation there. Locally, we have a 25-cent rebate that is going to be in effect till 2023. That's available for homeowners up to 25 kilowatts, but also to businesses up to 150 kilowatts. So that's going to cover almost every residential use and kind of smaller business-oriented uses for commercial industrial users here. But that's a great program. That for the typical homeowner, that's going to be about $1,700 to $2,500 for a rebate here. So that's the Missouri markets here. For anybody in Illinois, I want to highlight the Illinois solar renewable energy credits. So while it was Missouri, the federal credit and the Ameren Missouri credit will take about 30% off of your bill. The Illinois solar renewable energy credits are very powerful. They're based on the power generated from your solar system. That adds another 30% off of the cost of a solar system. So if you're in Illinois, you probably can get 60% of your cost reduced by installing a solar system. So you're using other people's money here, using people who are contributing through their utility fee on their bill, their renewable energy fee. The solar renewable energy credit has been exhausted currently in Illinois, but in the next week or two, we're very optimistic that a comprehensive energy bill will be signed by the Illinois legislature that will get everybody on the waiting list funded for their renewable energy credit and recalculate and replenish the fund for businesses and residents in Illinois to kind of keep going forward on their goal to hit 25% by 2025, and I think they're trying to go 40% by 2040. So Illinois, as I mentioned, even with Germany being aggressive on their policy, Illinois is much more aggressive on their policy of moving renewable energy in their state grid compared to Missouri here. Just a couple, and that's how the program works. Renewable energy credit is based on a dollar amount based on the amount of megawatt hours that are produced here. What I want to close with is things that you can do as a chapter to spread the sunshine. It's really pretty cool as a member of the Missouri Gateway Chapter that this chapter is part of the broader 1STL Energy and Emissions Working Group to try to reduce energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions by 28% by 2025. You can see the bottom, Washington University, Renew Missouri, Ameren, 1STL all coming together. And solar plays in really well because the average home in just 1 year is the equivalent of taking off 1.5 passenger vehicles driven for 1 year or 17,000 miles. So clearly solar plays a key role in reducing the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are occurring in our region. And with that, there's some great community programs that I'd appreciate you guys spreading the word about, especially if you live in these communities that are listed below. Missouri Botanical Garden and Washington University have come together for a program called Grow Solar St. Louis. That's a community education and group buy program that helps people learn about solar. What I gave you today was a brief excerpt of the slides that are in a power hour, which some of you may have seen already. We just did one at the Green Living Festival last week here. This program goes till August 31st, and if you go to Grow Solar St. Louis, you can sign up for a power hour. That gives people information, but also the opportunity to get involved in a rebate program as more people go solar. The price is reduced. Similar program on the Metro East that's sponsored by Lewis and Clark Community College, the Sierra Club, and Madison County Planning. And again, we're really excited to partner with these cities like Alton and Belleville and Glen Carbon. So if you're resident of any of these cities, I encourage you to contact your alderman, your city manager, to kind of get them to co-promote one of these power hours or get them in the city newsletter. This is a great avenue to inform people about solar and spread the value of solar amongst our community. And as Steve mentioned, the business community has their own group buy program. It's run by Renew Missouri. It's called Renew STL Solar. It also has a simplified solar process, public recognition, and a rebate program. We have discounts involved with battery storage, EV charging, and just regular storage here. So I think I kept us pretty much on track here. For time, Steve and I can be reached at these emails here. We'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, I apologize for my incompatible computer here on this program.
You are A-okay, Eric. Thank you so much. Wonderful. And does anyone have any quick questions for Eric or Steve that they'd like to have answered right now?
Basic cost for residents, say 2,000 square feet.
Well, it really all depends, but in the Grow Solar St. Louis program, the average range between $15,000 and $40,000 at the starting price for a homeowner. It depends on kind of the angle of your roof, where you're located, and the shading, so I can't really tell you exactly how much it would cost, but in general...
Perfect condition, plenty of light.
Yeah, I would say probably around, $20,000, $25,000, depending on how much you want to offset. If you offset about 80% of your energy would probably cost, and that's pre-incentives. So again, you take off 26% for the federal tax credit, another $2,000 for the Ameren rebate. So, all said and done, you might be more in the $14,000, $15,000 cash up front or cash over time. Obviously, you could finance it through a bank.
Appreciate it.
Great. Does anyone have any other questions, or feel free to type one in the chat real quick?
What's the payback period, Eric, for residential solar? What's that getting down to in Missouri, for instance?
Yeah, in Missouri, the payback is probably between 12 and 15 years. Is a very long payback period of time because the incentives aren't nearly at the same level as Illinois, where your paybacks are in a 6 to 8 year range here. But clearly, if you have a new roof and it's your forever home, it's still a great investment. It's the only appliance you're going to install in your house that generates cash flow.
Sure.
I have a question. It relates to a headline I saw this week where someone was being critical of the financing programs for solar for homeowners. And I don't have any more details. It's just like, well, people who, did go ahead and read that article would have questions, or it can put questions in people's minds, but it had to do with, not with the value of solar, but apparently with the financing of solar, financing programs for homeowners.
Yeah, you're referring, Linda, to the PACE program. That's Property Assessment for Clean Energy Program. It's a financing that's a voluntary tax assessment on your property. That involves energy efficiency improvements, and actually some of the problems with the program came from energy efficiency contractors that were putting upgrades into people's houses that exceeded the value of their home. And then when people defaulted on the energy efficiency loan, they then also defaulted on their home. So the legislature has passed new consumer oversight for the Clean Energy Board. I think maybe Emily and Steve might even be on those Clean Energy Boards, so I'll probably shut up here and let them talk. But essentially the program will get a little more oversight, but it's still a viable financing tool for energy efficiency and solar. I'll defer to Emily and Steve to finish the rest of the answer.
This is Marion. I'm sorry, but I have to peel off. I have another meeting at 6. So
Hi, Marion.
I'm sorry that I'm going to miss the rest of the program, but thanks.
Thanks so much for joining us. Take care.
So Eric, my understanding, one of the objections to the PACE program in the county is that a lot of the payback goes through the property taxes. And if people can't fully pay back for those through PACE for their solar financing, then it's up to the county to foreclose on their property. And so all the enforcement goes to the county and the finance people are untouched. I think that's another shortcoming.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. I just want to be clear that it's not just a solar only financing program, it's for energy efficiency here. And
thank you. I mean, that clarifies some things. But I just think the general public, we're wanting greater acceptance. So we have to, as professionals, be aware of what they're hearing on the other side. So thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, we will have the opportunity to speak more with each other in small groups for networking after our chapter founders discussion. So I am going to share my screen real quick as we begin to highlight our founders and get ready for a great conversation. So one moment. Oops. What did I do? You guys. Okay. Oh, too far. Who else am I missing? Okay, is that can you see all of our, how do I exit stop sharing? Sorry.
Everybody but Dan.
Everybody but Dan? Okay, great. Let me find him.
I see Dan.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
I see Dan. I think from our panel, Freddie, Susan, I don't see Susan Johnson. And I know Marion has left.
I don't think Suzanne is here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can feel free to maybe with those questions, we can open it up.
Yep.
Okay, so if everyone, you can do your speaker view or gallery view as attendees. So take it away, Puneet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. Well, thank you all for coming to this evening's program. And I want to personally welcome all of you to our 20-year celebrations, which will run through the whole year, really, in many different ways. And it's really nice of all our founders to take the time to join us and provide your wisdom. So as we talked about the topics that were just presented, energy is really an important factor, but the focus is really switching towards carbon and CO2 emissions, which is equally or somewhat even more important than energy conservation is how are we generating our energy sources, or what are our energy sources? So we're hoping to have a lively conversation with a number of our founders, and the topic here is how do we reduce our CO2 emissions in the next 8 years? So it's the 20th anniversary of our chapter, but the target here is 2030. So with that in mind, I'll start the conversation. I'll facilitate the conversation here. The speakers, as I call on you, if you will please take a moment to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself for the benefit of the rest of the group. I believe everyone knows you, but it would be still a good idea to say a couple of words and then answer your questions. I'll begin with Tim. And my first question is, we realize that it's urgent to manage carbon emissions, but how do we talk about the urgency of reducing CO2 emissions in the next eight years to our stakeholders, people who are coming to us, to the chapter, and people who are not coming to us? So, Tim?
Well, I guess I hung my shingle out to do this in 75.
Yep.
So been doing this for 40 plus years, or 45, yeah, 45 years, 46. Chasing BTUs and watts. The one thing that we still have to conquer is that we're using the wrong language for this. When you start talking about the fact that, not trying to pick on Steve, saying it's not easy to get to net zero, it's very easy to get to net zero. It's just that we don't have the right mindset. We don't have the social understanding or the apparent will to do it. It's all very cost effective. And it's always been cost effective. I mean, when you can do a 50% reduction of what you've got with less than an 8-year payback, we've already met the 2030 challenge of 50%. We just need to wake up and do it. There's more than enough capital trying to chase this if the money's there, as long as you're willing to, dedicate your savings to paying it off. So the next step is to make sure that you can go after the renewables, and at least at small commercial and residential scale. If you're on the 1M or the 2M utility rates with Ameren locally, it is cost effective in around 12 years to put solar in, as long as you don't go too far. I had the experience of not understanding when I was talking to StraightUpSolar, thank you very much, that, oh yeah, 70% is a nice target for my 5 kW on what energy I was using. Howsoever, having written books on solar, I was suddenly blind to what the realities are. And I neglected to remember that all my production's in the summer and we don't have air conditioning at our house. So I sold most of it back to Ameren at wholesale rates until I bought electric hot water, which I swore I would never do, and electric stove and range, and got an electric vehicle. And last year in July, I bought 1 kilowatt hour from Ameren. So now I'm titrated. So once you're at that point, you're getting your 12-year payback on solar or better. Once you've got the tax benefits, and then it's very easy to either invest in RECs because you've got so little to buy, or get together with others and joint buy a condo position in a wind farm somewhere. Now you're net zero.
So Tim, if I may ask for your insight into how do we really impress upon people that it's an urgent case, whether it's individuals or corporations, that do we use fear? Do we use financial reasons? How do we convince people?
Well, it's 45 years has taught me it's extremely difficult.
Okay.
Because we try over and over again. I don't want to beat up on the botanical gardens, but we took this concept to them in 2002, just after the bombing of the towers in New York. And Deb and I struggled to try to get them to invest in a 3 megawatt wind farm that would make them net zero.
Yeah.
And it would pay for itself. It is just something that just could never get considered, even though we helped them pass a resolution that said they'd do anything that paid back in 15 years or less. We have tried to approach it economically and say, what's the yield on your endowment? And it was 5 to 6%. So that meant anything from an energy standpoint that they invested in had to pay back in 15 years or less to give them the same yield on their endowment.
Yeah.
So we've gone down the road of trying to teach people that, hey, it's all economic, but somehow I'm saying we've got to change the language of how we talk about this.
Good point.
And it's not a function of trying to prove to them that it's cost effective. And so I'd say we have to work through the boards of directors. You know, if you need to, buy some stock in any company that you want to go that way so you can show up at a board meeting and make a stink about it. You know?
Good point.
Turn your mic on, Deb.
Deb.
In terms of the garden, I think it's an example of all types of organizations. There's just so many players with short and long-term requirements and goals, and having the right leadership, the right compelling leadership in the right place to move it forward is, it's not just convincing one person in a place like the garden or in any kind of well, I guess in a private organization, if you know, Tim has his own business, he knows what he wants to happen, so he's going to make it happen. But the complexity of organizational management and decision making is a challenge.
It's the soft sciences that I know nothing about. I mean, if it was a technocratic solution, we'd have been there by now.
Mm-hmm.
We have
well, let me switch the conversation to Jay.
What I've done.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
What I've done is I've moved on and I'm on the Conservation Council of the St. Louis Zoo, which also works in many programs around the globe with the Missouri Botanical Garden. And you have to keep in perspective things that we do here in St. Louis as to how it affects everything from China to Borneo to the Amazon. And some of the issues that they have there seem to be much more pressing than some of the issues we have here. We're dealing with forest fires and people get attention to California, and we burned up about 5 times that much in the Amazon. The smoke and everything else we do is one of the major contributors to some of the things that we say, oh, we can save a little bit of ozone and other stuff. And you don't save it here, you save it somewhere else on the globe, because it is one globe. And so that's the perspective I've taken. And I thought it was interesting that we had a pandemic, because 10 years before we started the Green Building Council, the main environmental issue I was dealing with on a national level had to do with indoor air quality with the EPA and with new legislation in Oregon that had to do with the indoor quality of buildings. And we dealt with how to deal with formaldehyde, all the furniture panels, and all this other stuff, paints, all the VOCs, and we got that all cleaned up. People don't realize that was a huge amount of progress that took place. And it took about 10 years, but it all happened, and we're much better off because of it. But today I look at this stuff globally and try to keep that in perspective with also what we're doing here in St. Louis.
Yeah, Puneet, one thing I think climate change is in a funny way is a red herring because it's one way of measuring unsustainable, situation. It's kind of one piece of that you can see, and you can see the results, and it's easy because it's fairly complicated. It's easy for people to have almost a religious belief that it exists or a religious belief that it doesn't exist. And
Yeah.
there are lots of ways to talk to, you have to talk to different people about it in different ways. It makes sense to where they're coming from. If it's a low income community, they don't give a crap about climate change.
Well said. Yeah, I think we have to define our message based on who we are talking to. I want to switch gears here a little bit. And Jay, next question is for you. So we talked about renewable energy as a method to reduce CO2 emissions. What are some of the other things we can do that might be unique to our region to reduce our CO2 emissions over the next 8 years to meet the 2030 target?
Thank you. It's good to see everybody 20 years later.
And introduce yourself. Yeah.
My name is Jay Jarvis. I'm a builder for the last 47 years, mainly in residential. Before I came to the Green Building Council here in St. Louis, I built in Sacramento, California, and Reno, Nevada. And then in the late 80s, the utility companies were paying us to implement energy efficient practices in our buildings. When I came back here and got involved here, I realized that there was no incentive by the utility companies to do that because energy costs were so low. And when I was struggling in the first 5-star Energy Star multifamily project, I recognized that the real problem was the appraisers and the values. So that's my background, and we still face that today, I believe, in trying to implement some of these things. For sure, it's the money. On a macro basis, I say mass transit has a big effect here in the area. If we could expand the metro, I think that would help tremendously. And I think if corporations, big employers think more about having people work at home, that could have a good effect on the reduction of CO2. I am in the field every day and have been all these years. I'm dealing with clients from various economic backgrounds, generally higher end clients, trying to give them a great product. Normally my work is focused by an architect and I follow their lead, but I was always trying to improve the quality of their home. And I think as far as an individual homeowner or a residential builder, you have to think about the air quality and how the HVAC system is working, the makeup air in the house. You want to try to limit your open flames, get more plants in the home, be more aware of the air purification advantages. With low VOCs, obviously, in the paints and everything else with off-gassing, your CO2 monitors. And I think a big help would be just to make sure your roof has a reflective roof covering, say white, even going with white shingles. Those are kind of the things I deal with every day. And in a political world, which is something I avoid, and frankly, what organizations don't, and therefore I've been a member of this organization for years, but I think we have to focus on the impact of these other nations and how we are addressing our freedom and our quality of life, and how we're going to force them to help the world to lower CO2.
Yeah, no, those are great ideas and great answers. And actually, I'm going to switch the order here a little bit since Susan is not here and Hannah asked that question on the chat. So one of the questions we had planned was, and any of you can jump in to answer that questions, is do you have opinions or ideas about building less or consuming less? I know we live in a capitalist society where consumerism is rampant for the building industry in the Midwest. How do we do more renovation? How do we make smaller buildings or not build if we don't need to? Because that's sort of anti-development, anti-economy. And Jay, I mean, you can certainly lead in, but others can jump in.
Well, the majority of my work in the last 10 years has been remodeling. People recognize that they have a piece that they like, a location that they like, and the unavailability of better building sites, they are adding and remodeling. And I think most everybody recognizes the basic features they need to put into their new additions and envelopes, windows, energy efficiency, insulation. I think people have that pretty basic grasp. When you get into these other systems, they're naive to it and they're scared of them, and it gets back to money. And I don't think that the presentation we had tonight from Eric was tremendous. I wish that could get out to the consumer better. Which I just don't think they're getting it.
Other thoughts on building less, consuming less? Anyone?
Related to that, I think there's some cultural issues, and these are difficult because they get into the concept of freezing in the dark. But we're so used to air conditioning, and I think all of us have different tolerances, and as we get older, it becomes somewhat of a health issue. But in our particular climate, we could design for a lot less air conditioning. For instance, when we designed Bowood Farms, it's a nursery, so people are inside and outside, and they're going, they don't need to be in a meat locker, and they're going back outside to look at plants. But we air conditioned the offices, but we didn't air condition the store, the retail area. And I think, these kind of cultural things are very difficult to change, because as we get more more used to things, and it's also happening in other countries. But I think if we could slowly change some of those cultural things of when you need energy within the buildings, and have more natural ventilation, more people just used to temperature variations, instead of putting on sweaters in the middle of the summertime. I think there's a huge cultural thing that can be changed there, and it's going to change. It's going to be in different regions, but I think there's a big aspect of that. And then another related piece is the energy of food production and buying more local. I mean, that's another huge aspect. It's not directly related to buildings, but it's related to sustainability and has a huge impact on climate. And it just on the solar issue, one of the most difficult things is we're working with the St. Louis Zoo now on a sustainability plan. And one of the hardest things that they face is that upfront cost of solar. Even though it may have a great payback period, somebody's got to buy it up front, or it's got to be deferred to another entity. And I think that deferring to another entity, such as a utility or other things, is a way that we have to support, because as a homeowner, I'm not going to spend $20,000, even if it has a 4-year payback period up front, because I can't afford it. And I think that that gets telescoped on bigger institutions, even though it's very efficient. That's a reality. Most people cannot afford that. And so, how do we structure the economics to make that more affordable? Are there some other ways to structure that so that cost can be spread out and evened out, so that people that really can't afford it can afford it?
That's a great point, Dan. So bringing us back to buildings, Bill, I'll turn over to you with my next question. So in your opinion, what are the best and most productive changes we can undertake as design and construction industry? I mean, you've been in that for many, many years. If you could please introduce yourself and then answer that question for us.
So what you're meaning, what are the changes that we've seen, or what do you?
I'm directing this to Bill O'Dell. Dan, I was saying the question was best and most productive changes we can undertake moving forward, because we're saying we've been doing some good things, but what are the other things we can do in the next 8 years to move the needle from a design and construction standpoint?
So until 17, I was a design principal at HOK. Trying hard to step back from that. It's a little hard at times to do that, but to do other things, including other ventures, another company. I think Tim and Jay and Dan have all kind of alluded to something here, which is we think of this as 20 years old, and the USGBC is 30 years old. There's a lot of momentum that we see, but in fact, I think you just cannot underestimate the ignorance out there, whether it's individuals or large institutions. I spent most of my career with large institutions. Now I'm dealing with developers, and it's just a huge challenge. I think that you have to accept that. I think my advice, I guess, is when you're dealing with this in a very polite way, of course, you have to be a pain in the ass. You just have to keep at it. Just keep at it. And you have to do your homework. And I'll tell you a story on myself recently that where I should have done my homework. I didn't realize there was homework to do in this case. We're doing apartments. I didn't realize until I got into it, because it was going to be LEED, that the home building industry as a whole has, and many other industries, I suppose, are doing the same thing. I just don't know about them. It found a kind of an end around. So they have their own system that looks green, but it's greenwashing. It's absolutely greenwashing, and they're just it's. I think those of us who are in the construction industry don't realize how prevalent that is. So the other challenge I think we have in that particular case, but in general, I think with LEED, which is, to me, it isn't perfect by any means, but it's still, the fact that you make these decisions up front, that you start at the very beginning before there's any design, dealing with these issues and pick them off one at a time as best you can, is still the way to go. Most of these other systems, when it's all done, somebody puts a little stamp on your building and says you passed, some great milestone, when in fact you've not done anything, and it's way too late to do anything at that point in any case. The other problem I think with the USGBC in LEED is facing is it's becoming extremely expensive, even for large organizations to deal with it. I've had really just yesterday, a major corporation, I'm not going to doing this, I'm helping my former partners with this. They put pencil to following LEED, and it's a significant portion of their building cost, and I could see that they're probably not going to do it. They'll put they'll say we followed LEED, and they'll say something, but they won't do it. They won't actually do it.
So Bill, don't you think that if you design a sustainable building, you'll automatically get all the LEED points and the building would be certified?
Well, that's been my method all along. Sometimes you just don't tell them what the hell they're doing. You just
exactly.
Do it. And that is certainly, there's you can get pretty far down the road with that. but whether they, in fact, one of the very first building, I had nothing to do with this, very first buildings that HOK did, it's exactly what they did. And at the end of toward the end of that project, it was a laboratory in Atlanta. The project, the campus architect suddenly got religion about LEED and said, well, man, we should do that. And the team down there was able to say, okay, here it is. We've already done it. But it wasn't adding 10% to the cost of the building to get certified and do all that sort of stuff. Now, it's not 10%, but it's a huge percentage. In this apartment that we're doing, the target rent, which is the market rent in the area, is $1.85 a square foot, something in that range. LEED would add probably 15 to 20 cents to that. Not following LEED, just the administrative costs of doing, this isn't upgrading the electric or, the HVAC or anything like that. That was fairly easy. But the administrative side of LEED is I think it's on the border of being prohibited. It's starting to drive people away.
Bill, are you saying it's the cost of the USGBC system itself, or the cost of the consultants implementing it?
Not the actual things that you do to the building. That's not what I'm talking about. It's all the administrative parts that go with it. Their fees, particularly on residential, are very high in a market where the margins are very small. So.
Thank you, Bill. Dan, we'll turn over to you next with the question, and Bill, you can jump in that as well after Dan, is how do we talk to our clients now in thinking about current and future projects? That's one of the big challenges that I sometimes run into, is how do we bring our clients along? And if they're on board, we as consultants, architects, constructors, designers, have a little bit easy going because we are serving the client. So Dan, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then if you can share some insights about talking to clients.
Dan Helmuth, I've been an architect for way too long. And I started out as a mechanical engineer and then went to the dark side and became an architect. Some of us have done the opposite. We've been doing sustainable design for a long time and done probably over 40 LEED projects and about 7 or 8 Living Building Challenge projects, and helped with Deb and everybody get the chapter founded way back when, which was loads and loads and loads of fun. And remind me of I just lost my thought. Remind me of this, my age.
So the question is, how do we convince the clients? How do we talk to them to adopt sustainability in their buildings?
I think it depends on who your client is. That's sort of what I was saying before. Everyone takes this different, they see it through a different lens. So, for instance, the zoo is seeing it through the lens of posterity, through the lens of habitat restoration, through the lens of conservation. That's what pushes their buttons. And so they see sustainability through sustaining animals and conserving habitat, that's very, very important. So that's a message to them. Washington University might have a completely different, they see it through maybe attracting students, through being good stewards of the environment, through an educational mission. A low-income community may see it through, being able to access food, being able to have safe streets, So I think it's a multiple message. There is no one size fits all, and I think we really have to understand who we're talking to and what pushes their buttons, because the language of sustainability that we like to talk to between ourselves is great, but it may not resonate with the people that we're talking to directly. And I think that's so important, and it's also a lot of fun. And so, we've done that in different ways with different kinds of people, and, sometimes successfully and sometimes not.
That's a great point. It's about changing our messaging with the same objective, depending on who your audience is. That's true in every business, every market, and it's true in sustainability as well. Bill, have you taken any unique approaches to convince your clients? You've done many green buildings around the country, around the world. I mean, you worked in the Middle East doing one of the most sustainable laboratory buildings. So any thoughts?
Well, you do have to tailor your message to each person. And I do think that it's what I said earlier, I suppose, is you just have to be politely a pain in the ass. You just have to keep it up. And Puneet, you said something earlier, which is which is good. It's just do it. You know, one of the very early projects I ever did back in the along these lines, long before LEED actually, in the early '90s. I explained to the president of the bank, you know, what we were doing, and I didn't have quite the vocabulary, I suppose, that we have today about some of these issues. And he said, "Listen, I've got Bill, I've got too many things on my plate as it is. You just do what you think is right. Come to me only if you if this is going to be a significant cost overrun, or there's a technology that's maybe not totally accepted." In other words, he's risk averse. And I realized that was an important lesson for me, because I was asking permission.
Yeah.
I didn't intend to, but I was asking permission. And we can't do that. We just have to do what's right. And in the end, he did everything we asked him to do, but still, you know, we can't apologize to it about it.
Exactly. And I think your point about doing your homework and knowing your subject really is a very strong asset to have when you're going in front of a smart client. So good. Well, we talked a lot about institution, big buildings, construction. I want to turn to Deb to bring it a little bit more personal and ask you the question, what are the things that we all can do, whether you are in the industry or not in the industry, as individuals, to really advance our goals to reduce CO2 emissions in the next 8 years to meet the 2030 challenge? Whether we are a homeowner or whatever our roles may be in life, but what would we do as individuals? Just some.
Well, I know this really innovative and progressive group that's part of the Missouri Botanical Garden called the Earthway Center that has all the resources you could possibly need to know how to literally walk the talk. I mean, we've always been trying to educate people on understanding, you know, what the individual impact is. And from the buildings that the homes you build, how you heat them, how you cool them, what kind of conditioning you tolerate, the food you buy, the clothing you buy, the car you drive, the waste you produce. I mean, I think that we all need to have our filters on all the time to really question our decisions and to make sure that we're leading with a sustainable response. I have been, you know, my background was more in energy and environmental policy. I worked for 10 years at William Town Associates in the 80s and really watched how the design process occurred and, you know, how hard it was to work, not hard all the time, but to integrate the architectural and the engineering decisions that needed to be made. And I think the same thing goes in your own personal life. And you have to be able to understand the impact that you have with each decision that you make within your home. And we have a responsibility. I think that that we also need, similar to what has happened with the USGBC, I feel that a lot of like-minded people came together in the 90s. The AIA's Committee on the Environment which really was the seed to our local chapter, you know, Tom and Marion and John and who's the fourth guy? He moved.
Greg.
Greg Polonic.
Oh, Greg Polonic, yeah. So, you know, that they were people who in their own lives had made decisions about what was the right priority, but then they recognized that if they could put their brains together, it would build and expand. And as a result, you know, John brought the idea to the Missouri Botanical Garden. The Missouri Botanical Garden, a bigger organization, has even a wider impact. And so I think we all have a responsibility to look at what our access is to different organizations and institutions where we may be that seed that can travel through. So you have a responsibility in your own world, but then also how can you multiply that impact? And I also want to do, you know, a quick shout out to the whole social equity piece, which is something that, you know, it used to be, I used to have this attitude. I didn't understand just because you could afford to buy it or you could afford to use it doesn't mean you necessarily have the right to that resource. And understanding that we have to, you know, pollution and poverty, this is inequitable distribution of resources. And so we need to have that filter on as well in making our choice.
Well said. Yeah, thank you, Deb, for those wise words for all of us. Well, I want to bring the conversation back to our chapter and where we are positioned. So I'll open this up to all 5 of you panelists.
Can I just say one thing, Puneet?
Yes,
We
yes.
haven't heard from Thomas.
Well, we'll let Thomas lead the next question.
Okay.
So the next question is, in your opinion, where should the chapter be focusing its efforts? So you've watched it grow from infancy 20 years ago to where we are. And now the question is, where should we focus in the next 8 years to meet our targets and goals? Tom, why don't you introduce yourself and respond to this question, and then others panelists, please chime in.
I'm Tom Tyler. I'm an architect, environmentalist, and photographer. And when we founded the chapter, it was because of frustration of trying to move stuff ahead faster and being dragged down by the environment and what it was at that time within other structures and other organizations. We needed a bigger audience, which is why we took it to Deb and the Botanical Garden, because it allowed contractors, engineers, architects, and within the AIA, we weren't able to outreach to that degree. Today, in the last year, in this environment, we've seen huge impact on our buildings. We have buildings such as the Southwestern Bell building sitting almost completely vacant downtown. We see buildings where occupancies are going to go down 30% because of technology. We see commutes that are going to be cut in half. We see all kinds of things like this that actually are going to be the most major impact that many of us as architects have seen in our lifetime. And you have to quit thinking about the next 5 years or the next 8 years. You have to think about not even 10 years, but where do we want to be 20 years from now, and start making your decisions. And that's what Tim, when he looks at a 10-year cycle or something like that, every time you'll find that those decisions are better decisions than the ones that people are making today. And that's where the committee needs to go. Bigger outreach, more organization, more communication, and a whole different look at buildings that has never been an opportunity like this, at least in, I'm going to say since 1973 when we worked on Sears Tower.
Thank you, Tom. Others, Bill, Dan, Jay, Tim?
Let me come in here. I wasn't out of graduate school more than a year, maybe 2 years, when I got involved with a very large project for a major company. And this was in the middle of, for those of you old enough, kind of the energy crisis in the mid 70s, late 70s, whatever it was. And so this client was very interested in low energy. They didn't know much about it, and I certainly didn't know anything about it. I mean, I was pretty ignorant. But we happened to be doing most of the work in our New York office, and I saw a flyer. I don't even remember who put it on. It might have been an ASHRAE. Anyway, something like that. And they had a series of seminars, and so I started going to those. And they were really good. It was just about energy, but they were really good and very detailed. And it was absolutely tremendously valuable for me, a very young architect who didn't, leading a bunch of people who didn't know anything about it either. To guide our engineers who I must admit really weren't very up to speed on low energy strategies, but became very enthusiastic. But it was the language that I got out of and the information I got out of those seminars, which was just invaluable. I mean, I can remember times when, these were always in the evening.
Yeah.
And I'd go from that thing and one evening into a project meeting the next day, and said, we need to do this, 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 and people took it. So I think the USGBC and could do a lot more of that, particularly aimed at younger professionals, architects and engineers. Give them the tools and the language to work with the clients, for their clients.
Mm-hmm.
I think we really need to up our game, constantly. It's, there's always the danger that, either any of these tools becomes, sort of, standard and doesn't keep pulling us up, and it's designed to pull us up. I like the idea, we need to look at sort of healing technologies, for site development, healing technology, positive energy, regenerative design. I think that's exciting, and I think that's exciting to younger people. We need to look, what can we do to, for environmental justice, acknowledging the issues that's caused, and really looking at, I think it's so exciting what Biden's doing on the infrastructure bill. I don't know if it's going to happen, but what could we do to rebuild our cities? I mean, you go one block away from downtown and it looks like Sarajevo. I mean, it's a disgrace. And the same is true in our rural areas. I mean, I was just in a little town and down in the Ozarks, and it looks like a ghost town. And this stuff is, it's just under the surface, rural and urban all over our country. And we have this incredible opportunity to rebuild these places, make them, useful. What can we reinvent in our economy to make these places viable again? We're not going to bring back what was, but how can we rebuild something that works for now? And some of that comes from what Tom said. The game has changed. Location is not as critical. Office, space is not as, you can work from anywhere now. And we proved it, and we've been through the gauntlet, and we don't want to do it all the time, but we can do it some of the time. So our spatial needs have changed. And I think, putting all these things together as we try to reinvent our cities and reinvent our rural areas, this is particular to this country, but, we have incredible challenges. And I think the awakening that, at least, some of us, and I know it's not true for people who've had to live through it, but the awakening of the wrongs of environmental justice is almost unfathomable. I mean, I see what my kids learned in school. I know what I learned in school. as we learned what, why the situation, why things have gotten the way they are, it's pretty mind-boggling. So
I just want to say it was 20 years ago that Bob Berkebile came to speak to us as the first guest speaker for the USGBC. And I would say if we had been recording that, it would be worth seeing it today. Yeah. Because he did talk about many of the same issues in terms of just philosophically looking at our buildings, but also regenerative as opposed to being less bad, but actually creating a positive. He had a pretty, that was a pretty excellent presentation. And I was just realizing that was 20 years ago in June. That was our first official program. And I think, Dan, you put him up at your house, didn't you?
I was so impressed to have him staying in the house.
Yeah, we were definitely low budget operation then.
Well, we are coming up on our time here for this session. So Tim and Jay, any closing thoughts or guidance for the chapter before I turn it over to Freddie?
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I put a little thing in the chat that I was hoping would spawn some interest. I mean, one of the things we haven't really addressed is the value of what we call waste streams in our society. I think one of the first things Deb did for me as a graduate student was she did a study not only on fuel cells, which still haven't come to a life, but she also did waste to energy research paper for us. And we have so much that we're throwing away, and you can just turn that into energy, and you've killed two birds. The landfill costs, the fugitive methane issues that it's creating from a climate standpoint in the landfills, and then the cost of throwing it away, plus the energy that you can generate from processing it. In Sweden, they don't allow you to landfill organic matter. It has to go through a combustion process to make power and thermal energy. We've got a real opportunity with hundreds of millions of dollars being spent by MSD to do a fluidized bed to eliminate the sewage. Why can't we all collectively get together, bring the heat to bear? I've been trying to do it my own small way, but I don't know the ropes as well as a lot of people on the screen do. And we could take that fluidized bed, and that energy there could generate power. We might have to fight the PSC for it a little bit, because it'd certainly be over 100 kW. And I just don't know what the rules are, but there's no reason why we can't generate power from that waste. And then we could work with the waste haulers locally to not go to landfills, but collaborate with MSD. We might have to do a little source separation somewhere, but get all the organic matter that's still available in the waste stream and go right into that huge fluidized bed incinerator.
The pandemic is a huge setback for recycling too. It's been the waste.
Well, if you do the sorting, you might get that. But again, a lot of plastic isn't going into recycling, and it has a huge thermal value when it's combusted. We might even be able to convince people that it is, if we go through other processes, we could make renewable natural gas out of it and sell that on the market for RINs, actually making money in the process. There's just so much that's left on the table that if, I'm just ecstatic about seeing everybody again and thinking that, boy, we could all put our collective minds together, create an entity that would help finance it and make money for ourselves in the process. There's no end to what the benefits could be. And then we could all dedicate that to helping the city actually realize its goal maybe of getting to a 50% reduction by 2030. Think of the renewable power that would make. It probably challenge Ameren in terms of productivity from some of their existing plants not using coal. I'm sorry.
Point.
You asked for an idea that we could all work on. At least that's the way I interpreted the question.
I think there was a city in South America called Curitiba that actually was an example for all the recycling and fish and
Yeah, exactly. You got it,
everything else.
You got it, Tom.
That was 1982, if not the 70s.
Yeah. Isn't that the one where the bus platforms were raised up and stuff like that, and everybody could just roll on and off?
Because it sped up the entry by 80% or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sort of, in light of the time in managing Zoom, Jay, unless you have something dramatic to share, I'll turn it over to Freddie.
Best of luck to everybody. Good to see everyone.
Yeah, be more dramatic than that, Jerry. Be more dramatic than that.
Thank you so much, all of you panelists, founders, to join us tonight and giving us all this advice and guidance. Freddie, back to you.
Freddie, do you want me to close up?
Or Emily, yeah.
I think we were going to have Hannah make closing remarks, but she's having some computer issues. So I'm going to just wrap up real quick and share a few upcoming events first. We have a great coffee break this Friday on the Living Building Challenge with Madeline Smith as our guest. This is part of our summer coffee break series on green building certifications. We actually have an in-person work day this Saturday hosted by our emerging professionals at the Fresh Starts Community Garden in the North Newstead neighborhood. I think there's still room for people to sign up for that. And if you are interested in considering solar for your home, we're hosting one of the Grow Solar Power Hours next week on June 15th at 6:30 p.m. So you can attend that to learn, get a little more in-depth presentation on what Eric covered. And as always, our website is up to date with events as well. In a minute, Freddie's going to draw our door prize, but I do want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. It's really wonderful to see our chapter founders and to hear your thoughts and ideas, especially when it comes to the future of the chapter. We've done a lot in 20 years. We still have a lot of work to do, that's for sure. But really, thank you for your foresight 20 years ago, for your contributions over the years, and for joining us this evening. And thanks also to Puneet and the Membership and Marketing Committee and StraightUpSolar and Freddie for all their work putting this event together tonight. So Freddie, want to draw our prize tonight? Compliments of StraightUpSolar, a solar phone charger.
Yes, so I went ahead and put everyone's name who's here into a random name picker. So there you are. So we're not cheating. Here we go. Drum roll, please.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, isn't that clever?
Who's the winner? Where'd it go? The winner is Hannah. Hannah, are you ready to receive a solar charger? Oh, she probably can't answer us. Yes? Okay, great. Okay, perfect. Yes, so thank you everyone for joining. Please go to our website and just find the upcoming calendar events for all the events we just mentioned, and feel free to register. So I guess we'll have a great evening. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it, chapter founders, and thank you members for being here as well. We did record tonight because I knew it was going to be a fabulous conversation. So I'll be sure to send the recording to all of our remaining members who missed out. So thanks so much.
Good to see everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Next time.
Take care.
Enjoy.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.